Leader of MJP on Francine Martin says he is still unhappy with the Minister of Education's decision to reopen schools. PFP Member of Parliament says he has a number of questions regarding the stimulus plan. But first up, Minister of Education gives update on exams for secondary schools. Those are the headlines for Thursday, April the 23rd, 2020. This is SXM Daily News. I'm Valerie Van Putten. Thank you for joining me. And now for the details. Minister of Education, Dr. Anders Rodolph Samuel, gave an update on school exams. The minister said that now that the country is in a lockdown, secondary school students will not be able to do their final written exams.
I want to bring to your attention that we all understand that now that the country is in a lockdown, that when it comes to education, and we are talking secondary education, that the school will not be able to do the final written exams like it normally did. So there is a process ongoing together with the school boards in using a method to see to it or to bring about the graduating of the students. And together with the school boards, the ministry is working on this system. So you will realize that the schools have done what we will consider maybe their first centre-toots or their first general exam, but during the year, they also have been doing different tests with the kids. And together with what we have, so what has been done without the final written exam, we are looking at a method in coming up in a way that the students can graduate. So special attention is being given to our students and especially those in the exam classes. We cannot indicate at the moment when schools will reopen because we are in a state of emergency, and during the state of emergency, we have to wait until we get word from the AOC. Once the AOC have made clearance that the state of emergency is lifted, then secondly, we can look into when schools can open, and if schools can open, then we will definitely be giving the exam students special attention to see how we can save whatever we can save up until that moment. Other students that are receiving attention are our children, our students abroad. Now, normally around this time, around the end of April going into May, you would have some students, especially United States, that would be closing off their studies and would be able to come home. Now that they are not able to come home, you can imagine that they would be encountering different situations. Some of them that they might have to move from the campus they are at. Some of them would have nothing to do. So how do we fill the time? How we keep an eye on them? And also looking at when it will be possible to bring them home. So together with the ministry, we are keeping an eye on these issues. So for the parents, I would like to let you know that I do have attention to this. So in regards to summer classes, in regards to students having to leave their apartments, attention is being given to all of this.
And at the weekly Council of Ministers press briefing on Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020, Minister of Romi, the Honorable Egbert Doran, says that he has been holding meetings with, among others, his support staff regarding hurricane preparedness, hurricane shelters, and other maintenance work. According to the minister, these spending matters is of top priority, and he wants to get things moving. The minister also had been receiving multiple complaints from tenants and landlords alike, and he addressed the matter.
Recently, I had meetings between my support staff, together with the Secretary General, department heads within the Ministry of ROMI, concerning hurricane preparedness. Among the topics discussed were the hurricane shelters and the necessary works that needs to be completed for all these various locations. Pumps and their maintenance prior to the start of the hurricane season, the cleanup and removal of various car wrecks and boat wrecks. Some of the additional matters were discussed as well were in regards to streetlights and government vehicles. In this regard, I scheduled a meeting next week with the NRPB in order to discuss these pending matters, as I see them as top priorities in order to get the ministry moving in the right direction. In regards to what we've all been seeing going on in regards to rent and so forth, as a representative of the people, I've been receiving multiple complaints from tenants and landlords alike pertaining to rental payment. As a minister of ROMI, under which public housing falls, I felt it important to address these concerns that have spiked since the start of this COVID-19 pandemic. It goes without saying that once a landlord and a tenant enter into a rental contract, both parties are expected to comply with their obligations according to that agreement. For the landlord, that means, among other expectations, that a proper home or rental space will be provided to the tenant for their use. For the tenant, that means that, among other obligations, that they will pay their rent on time in the agreed amount. The COVID-19 pandemic and subsequently followed due to this pandemic has caused some unforeseen stoppage in cash flow within the general population of St. Martin, as well as businesses on the island. This has led to continued issues and frustration between tenants and landlords. While the ministry is not condoning or suggesting that tenants should stop paying their rent completely, the ministry is strongly urging tenants and landlords, together with the rental committee, to seek reasonable solutions to the conflicts that have arisen as a result of this pandemic. Even if attempts to resolve the possible rental conflicts prove to be unsuccessful, all parties are encouraged to be empathetic to one another during these trying times. This goes both ways, of course. Landlords are encouraged to be lenient as possible with tenants that have suddenly lost their jobs temporarily due to this pandemic and suddenly find themselves in a very compromising position as a result of this. And on the other hand, tenants who can still afford to pay their house rent should not take advantage or use this opportunity to withhold rent money from landlords and use this money for other matters. Both parties have to take each other into consideration, meaning that the landlord be sympathetic to the tenants that are going through a genuine struggle, and the tenants also need to understand that many landlords, when not receiving the rent, will also not be able to meet their obligations. There are landlords that only survive off of their rent. Therefore, this would also be a part of having them struggle if both parties does not take each other into consideration.
One of St. Martin's former top civil servants, Mr. Louis Duzanzon, was laid to rest today, Thursday, April 23, 2020, 1 week after his passing. Mr. Louis Duzanzon was an author, historian, mentor, husband, and father. Louis Duzanzon passed away last Thursday morning at his home in Dutch Quarter. He was in his early 70s. A very quiet, calm, and calculated man, the late Louis Duzanzon always stood tall amongst men. He was a man of tremendous knowledge. He was referred to as a walking encyclopedia, especially in the area of governmental affairs. In the absence of internet back in the day, one could always count on the deceased for his expert opinion regarding various functions in government. The late Louis Duzanzon was the father of our media colleague and newscaster D'Angelo Duzanzon. For many years, Louis Duzanzon held an end-of-the-year get-together for his colleagues in the civil service at his home. Our heartfelt condolences goes out to his family and friends who are left to mourn. And in other news at this time, the police on St. Martin arrested a man with the initials SL on Wednesday, April the 22nd, 2020, at about 1 p.m. at a border in Belvedere in connection with failure to comply with a given order. The suspect and his father, who are both residents of French Quarter, were informed that they needed a signed waiver from the Dutch authorities before crossing the border, regardless of being residents of French Quarter. SL, who was told on various occasions that he could not cross the border, began reacting very aggressively towards the French and Dutch officers at the location. He was asked several times to stop the aggressive behavior and to leave the location, which he refused. To avoid that the situation from escalating any further, the officers on location decided to arrest SL. The suspect resisted his arrest and was later put in handcuffs. During the arrest, SL nor his father were injured at any time. SL was taken to the Phillipsburg police station, and after giving a statement, the suspect was given a summons to appear in court and was released. And still to come, Minister of Finance gives more breakdown on the stimulus package. We'll have the details of that story and more when SXM Daily News returns.
GEBE has been faithfully serving the communities of St. Martin, powering your home and our economy. Come rain or shine, our qualified team of professionals are working hard 24 hours a day to provide you and your family with safe, reliable electricity and water. We use the latest technologies and test our products daily to maintain the highest international standards. Our friendly staff is always there to assist you, whether in person, over the phone, or online. We are committed to constantly improving our products and services, making them more efficient, effective, and environmentally friendly to serve you better today and our next generation of clients tomorrow. GEBE, powering a brighter future.
Our friend Megawati is here with tips to save you energy. 1. Turn your airco temperature up. 2. Use a ceiling fan instead. 3. Buy energy-saving products. Save some green with NVGEBE.
And as we continue now with the news, Minister of Finance Ardwell Irion, in his presentation in Parliament on the stimulus and relief plan for St. Martin, the minister made his presentation on Tuesday, April the 21st, 2020. The plan, according to the minister, is a direct relief of 114 million guilders. The plan includes direct relief for businesses and individuals who are impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. He elaborates.
In slide 13, you can see the components of the plan, which is direct relief with an estimated amount of 140 million guilders, government-related support, and the cost of health care related due to COVID-19. Slide 15, we go with direct relief. The plan includes direct relief programs such as the payroll support, income support for sole proprietors, vendor license holders, bus drivers, and independent taxi drivers, income support for the unemployed, and a potentially soft loan program that we have requested from the Netherlands. Payroll support for the businesses, slide 16, the support to businesses that are facing revenue losses. We have 3 categories. One category where if you make a loss of 80% to 100% loss, you're qualified for 80% of payroll. If you have revenue losses of 50 to 80%, you are then technically qualified for payroll support of 70%, and losses of 20 to 50%, you are then could potentially be qualified for payroll support of 60%. For the unemployed, for independents, vendors, and so forth, as was previously mentioned, there's a minimum payment of 1,150 guilders.
And in more news about the stimulus package, Party for Progress Member of Parliament Rayon Peterson had a number of questions regarding the stimulus plan, including the consensus for the stimulus plan. He expounds.
Mr. Chairman, before I go into the specifics of the stimulus plan, I have a few questions concerning the package in general, based on information that has been shared on the new website of the stimulus relief plan and on social media within the last 2 days. Since the invitation was extended to the Minister of VSR to be part of this meeting, I think it's important for transparency's sake to ask both ministers if there is a consensus regarding the stimulus plan and if the version presented to Parliament right now, and that was made public on the new website of the stimulus plan, if this is confirmed to be the last version of the stimulus plan that is planned to be presented and executed. because I believe we all have seen a document that my fellow colleague MB Baumkamper mentioned, made by some lawyers. I want to know if it is the intention of the Minister of VSR to follow up on this report, and if so, how does this fit into the current stimulus plan that is being discussed, and will this further delay any funds that have been requested? Regarding the stimulus plan itself, my first concern is the list of companies that are exempted from receiving any aid when it comes to the relief plan. This concerns me because I personally do not understand the legal basis for, and based on what information this list was created. Based on the information on the website, this list was based on the International Standard Industrial Classification of All Economic Activities, a United Nations industry classification system. But based on what was this applied to St. Martin? Did it take the unique economy of St. Martin into consideration? And was the contribution per business when it comes to tax revenue for government taken into consideration? Because if the largest contributors of taxes for government do not fall under the group that can get support, government will lose double income when these companies shut down, and then we're going to have a bigger problem. I'm therefore of the opinion that the word solidarity isn't being used properly. Given the state of emergency, many businesses have halted all of their operations because they do not fall under the exceptions given in the national decree for businesses who are allowed to continue operating. For example, construction companies and auto repair companies. However, based on this list, they automatically do not qualify to get any support, but they for sure will also have a revenue decline of more than minimum 50%. This list will cause more layoffs, and it gives the people of St. Martin the impression that only based on the essence of your business, you will get support. According to me, the relief is supposed to be for every individual in need, not only certain businesses. And I don't see enough support coming for the small businesses, especially the sole proprietors.
Member of the anti-poverty platform, Raymond Gisseroun, responds to the proposed stimulus package by the Minister of Finance. Mr. Gisseroun was at the time speaking at the anti-poverty platform weekly press briefing about the employer organizations of St. Martin and the compensation.
We refer to the employer organizations of St. Martin, who in February demanded a 90% compensation of their total payroll expenses, the same compensation as the Dutch government presented for the businesses in the Netherlands and in the Best Islands, which were affected by the coronavirus pandemic. So with this payroll compensation proposal now, the government of St. Martin wants the kingdom government to pay for the stimulus and relief plan, but government to compensate our businesses and employees the same 90% compensation as the ones in the Netherlands, as well as in Bonaire, Saba, and Statia. By the way, only workers with a maximum wage till 15,000 guilders a month will be compensated, and this only for a maximum period of 3 months. Our second discriminatory argument discovered. It is not all the businesses that are included in this stimulus plan. According to what we have read in the plan, only 60% of the workforce will get support. The COVID-19 impacted all the businesses, especially those on the list of non-essential business. But we read in the SSRP, the Stimulation and Relief Plan, that in collaboration with SZV, we quote, an analysis of the sectors was done to determine the levels of impact, which further determined which companies under which sectors will qualify for this support program. End of quote. In regards to the government-owned companies, the Harbour and Winair are labeled as high impact, as operations have fully ceased and are hence included. The outcome of the stimulus package, we quote again, will support approximately 60% of the workforce. End of quote. In other words, approximately 40% of the workforce will not be supported, and thus discriminated. Now, some members of parliament questioned the Minister of Finance, especially on the discrimination introduced by the criteria in the government asset V analysis. But none questioned the discriminatory, unequal compensation treatment to be implemented by the Kingdom government.
And now turning to our weather forecast for April the 23rd, 2020. Small pockets of available moisture in the lower levels of the atmosphere may cause some brief local showers during this forecasted period. Meanwhile, a weak Atlantic high pressure system will maintain a mostly gentle to moderate wind flow. Seas are expected to remain slight to moderate up to 6 feet today and through Friday. An increase up to 7 feet is expected over the weekend due to moderate to fresh wind flow. And now let's turn to your 3-day forecast. And still to come, leader of MJP on Friends St. Martin is still unhappy with the proposed reopening of schools. We'll have the details to that story and more when SXM Daily News returns.
Make use of WIB mobile banking with easy access and direct usage of face recognition, PIN code, or fingerprint. Download WIB mobile banking app and make your transaction from anywhere at any time. For more information, visit wib-bank.net/quick-login.
And in news from Friends St. Martin, Councilman and leader of the MJP, Louis Mussington, in his weekly radio broadcast on 101.5 FM on Wednesday, April the 22nd, 2020, is still unhappy with the decision of the Minister of Education in France regarding the reopening of schools on French St. Martin.
The Minister of Education, Mr. Blaquer, had a conference, a video conference yesterday morning in Paris with the Commission on Cultural and Educational Matters of the National Assembly. And he outlined the plan of action, or we call it the roadmap for the reopening of the schools. Firstly, it is noted that the teachers will go in a day or two prior to the 11th to get the instruction, the guidelines from the authorities. Now, left to the teachers to decide with their union if they're going to respond to that call of duty or if they're going to sit out and waive their rights to stay home or to protest the returning back to school. There are some clear dates that he indicated and how the procedure would go into effect. He's saying that on the 11th, they would begin the school year, at least not the school year, the reopening, and they would start to work with what they call the maternelle, the grande section, the first grade, not the first graders. There's the first grader, the kindergarten, the last class of the kindergarten, the first graders, and those who are preparing to go secondary, those, in other words, the same, the fifth graders, in other words, the same doing. So those who will start off on the 11th of May. And he also said clearly that it will only be 15 pupils, 15 children per class, no more than that. And of course, that's what from the ministry, that's the guidelines from the ministry. Where they say, okay, there will be extended amount of recreational activities and a lot of sport activities will be introduced during that period. So it will be an alternative system where 1 week a group of 15 will be in school and the following week the other group of 15 would be in school. But here's where the matters become difficult. Can each collectivity, whether it's the St. Martin collectivity, the Guadeloupe collectivity, or all collectivities of the French nation, would they be in a position to guarantee the safety? This is where the parents' association is very vocal and very much concerned right now. Can the collectivity, let's say the case of St. Martin, be in a position where they can guarantee the safety of all the children, the 8,000 or more children who are in the school system on the northern side of the island. Here's the main question that is now posed before us here tonight as we speak on this talk show. In terms of safety, because not only the whole personnel have to also be equipped with their gloves and with their masks, and the sanitation measures must be guaranteed before they can give the green light to say, yes, we as a collectivity can open up back the schools.
And still to come, ministers in Aruba cut salary by 20%, civil servants by 12.6%. And you'll have the details of that story when SXM Daily News returns. Stay tuned. And as we end this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening, this item out of the island of Aruba. Due to the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, the financial situation on Aruba is troublesome. Public revenues have fallen by 80% and costs have risen sharply because suddenly financial support must be provided to prevent 37,000 people from losing their jobs. There is no guarantee that there will be money soon to pay salaries, whether for health care or for pensions. The government of Aruba is diligently looking for funds in the United States and in the Netherlands. Government costs, especially salaries, must also be reduced. Prime Minister Evelyn Wever-Groes has informed the unions that the government will reduce salary costs for the period from May through December 2020 as follows. Ministers, office holders, advisors, and directors of government entities are surrendering 20%. Officials and employees of subsidized foundations and government entities contribute 12.6%. Pensioners of the APFA give 4.5%, and the government has already met twice with the unions. Although there is no general consensus, the proposal is supported by the majority of unions under certain conditions, such as cost of living has risen, the government has decided to carry out stricter price controls, and to sit down with the port company and importers to reach agreements. Agreements have also been made with the banks that they will take into account of the lowered wages on a case-by-case basis. Government entities must also surrender, on which the government has decided to instruct the entities to reduce costs, and Prime Minister Wever-Groes' standard is introduced, which is a maximum salary for directors of government entities of 130% of the salary of the Prime Minister. This is a structural measure. In addition, salaries will have to be cut during this crisis, as stated above. The fee for the supervisory directors will also be reduced by 20%, although several council members have already indicated that they will surrender 100% during the crisis. The press release reads in part. I am Valerie Van Putten. Thank you for joining me this evening. And just a reminder that this and other programs are available online. Simply log on to stmartinmediacenter.com for viewing. And on behalf of SXM Daily News team, we thank you for watching and plan on meeting you right back here again tomorrow.